Me and Pac went in the studio and did a song together. And then them little dudes.
Outlawz.
Yeah.
Outlawz.
They came, like, as soon as we got there, they came up to Pac talking about, yo, Lauryn Hill dissed you, Mobb Deep dissed you.
Now, once he got on, did he ever reach back to you?
Yeah, Jay had me come and do Summer Jam with him one year. I think that was the time when he had that.
It is true. Tupac, he really had an issue with Jay-Z. He really didn't like him then.
Not at all.
I think that if Pac was alive, it would have been a whole different story. And as much money as Jay-Z has, he still hasn't accomplished what Tupac accomplished before he was at 25 years old.
Big Daddy Kane just dropped a bombshell about Jay-Z and Tupac, and absolutely no one saw it coming. Turns out the story we've all been told might have been a lie from the start. Back then, Jay-Z was just a hungry up-and-comer, tagging along on Big Daddy Kane's tour. He wasn't headlining. He was jumping on stage during outfit changes, freestyling to keep the crowd hyped. But this wasn't just a one-off cosign. Kane invested real time. He helped Jay record early tracks, pushed his demo to major labels, and gave him opportunities most new artists could only dream of. But once Jay started climbing the ranks, Kane's name started fading from the narrative, fast. That's when things start to look shady, especially when you throw Tupac into the mix. While Kane was helping Jay make noise in the East, Pac was shaking the entire West Coast, calling out fake rappers and exposing industry phonies. And yes, even taking jabs at Jay-Z. Now people are starting to ask, what was Kane really implying? Did Jay-Z take more than just inspiration from Kane and Pac? Did he build his empire by stepping over the very legends who helped open the door?
Hold up. Tupac is a lyricist. See what I'm saying? It's just that he's not one of those lyrical MCs that spit stuff, but his stuff is, he spit deep lyrics that touch your soul.
Let's break it down. In the early 90s, Jay-Z was still an unknown, just another rapper trying to break through. But Big Daddy Kane gave him a major boost during the Chocolate City tour, letting Jay hit the stage and spit bars while Kane changed outfits behind the scenes. That kind of spotlight? Pure gold for a rising MC. Kane didn't stop there. He hit the studio with Jay, laid down tracks, and even shopped his demo around to major labels. But truth be told, most execs weren't impressed. Back then, Jay's flow wasn't moving the needle and the industry just wasn't buying it yet.
I heard that no one really wanted to sign him when you were shopping him around the record labels. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This was, I want to say, I don't know, 90, 91 maybe. We was, Jay, we recorded some songs, probably about 4 or 5 songs on Jay-Z, and shopped them to several different record labels, and they all passed.
They said Jay's style didn't land, that it didn't hit the mark. But Kane, he still believed. He saw something the labels couldn't. Jay eventually found his rhythm and carved out his own lane. But here's the twist. If you listen closely to Jay's early flow, you can hear it. The fast, slick, aggressive delivery. That wasn't just coincidence. That was Big Daddy Kane's signature. His influence is embedded in those early bars. Yet as Jay-Z's star rose, that part of the story started disappearing. The interviews, the documentaries, the origin stories, Kane's name was barely mentioned. Like his blueprint got copied, then quietly erased.
I remember actually having a record deal through a production deal with someone else and recording, and then the next thing you know, someone else on the label blew up.
I've seen this play out before with Kane. 3 cuts in your eyebrows trying to wild out. Now pause. That line from Jay-Z might sound slick, but back in the day, those 3 eyebrow slits, that was Big Daddy Kane's signature look, his brand. He made it iconic. So when Jay dropped that bar with that cool, dismissive tone, fans started whispering, was that a shot? Even Angie Martinez brought it up on her show, wondering if Jay was throwing shade. Kane played it off publicly, kept it classy, but behind the scenes, the chatter was loud, because by then, Kane's commercial run had slowed down. A new generation was taking over, and Jay, once the wide-eyed student watching Kane from the wings, now he was the main event. In that line, it felt like a cold shoulder, a quiet message that said, thanks for the boost, now step aside. Jay himself has admitted it. He studied Kane backstage, watched his moves, his timing, his confidence, absorbed everything. But as Jay transformed into the money-driven mogul we know today, Kane's role in that origin story faded, quietly, deliberately. And now, years later, Kane's finally asking out loud, did Jay-Z erase him on purpose? But Kane's not the only one who noticed the shift. While Kane was getting edged out, another giant was ramping up, Tupac. Pac saw the culture changing. He saw substance giving way to flash, passion replaced with image, artists chasing charts instead of truth, and climbing the charts fast, Jay-Z. Word was, Jay felt that pressure. Pac wasn't just talented, he had presence, that raw, unteachable fire. Jay had bars, sure, but Pac had soul, command, a force that couldn't be ignored. And maybe Jay knew deep down he couldn't match that. It's crazy to think while Kane and Pac were blazing with authenticity, Jay was slowly building his empire, brick by brick, move by calculated move. But now that Kane's finally speaking out, the spotlight may be swinging back around. Because there's one thing Jay can't duplicate, real presence. That's what made Pac a legend, that's what gave Kane his crown. But presence like that, it's a double-edged sword, and eventually, it blew up. Jay-Z and Tupac had real tension before Pac's tragic death. And it wasn't just music beef, it was personal. Things started heating up when Jay began linking with Biggie. They got close and the collabs started flowing. By 1996, Brooklyn's Finest dropped on Jay's Reasonable Doubt album. Jay and Big trading bars, slick, sharp, East Coast pride all over it. But that track, it was a spark in a powder keg. Irv Gotti, who was tight with Jay back then, saw the writing on the wall. He warned him, don't put Big on that song. The East versus West feud was already reaching a boiling point, and Irv knew that one move could escalate things beyond control. And it did.
You got to go back to Brooklyn's Finest. I was dead set against it. I was telling Jay, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And he was like, why? And I was just like, he's too strong. I said, but before we take over the world, we got to take over the West Coast. Before we take over the West Coast, we got to take over the East Coast. Before we take over the East Coast, we got to take over New York. Before we take over New York, you got to take over Brooklyn. And he owns all that. And I was like, this is not a whack. So I was just like, I was in fear that I was like, yo, you may come off like this little man. You understand?
Irv Gotti saw the storm coming. He knew that dropping a joint track with Biggie, especially at that moment, could throw gasoline on an already raging fire, and fast. See, Biggie and Pac didn't always have beef. In fact, they started out on good terms. There was mutual respect, even friendship, but everything changed in 1994. That's when Pac was shot 5 times during a robbery at Quad Studios in New York. To Pac, it wasn't just a robbery, it felt like a setup. And whether it was true or not, he became convinced that Biggie and Diddy knew more than they let on, that they were connected to it somehow. Pac felt blindsided, betrayed, and once that trust was broken, he never let it go. Biggie, on the other hand, always denied having anything to do with the shooting, said he was just in the building, unaware of what went down. But by then, the damage was done. The lines were drawn, and Jay, knowingly or not, was stepping right into the crossfire.
Yeah, I think Pac was more upset that that word was getting back to him, that the people that did do this to him was affiliated one way or another with Biggie, and whether they was extorting him or word got back that they was going to do this to Pac. So this is one of the reasons that Pac was upset.
But after that moment at Quad Studios, it was all out war. Pac and Biggie went from friends to sworn enemies, trading lyrical shots in public. The tension wasn't just bubbling, it was boiling over. And right around the time Jay was prepping Brooklyn's Finest, Biggie dropped Who Shot You? That track hit like a bomb. And while Big claimed it wasn't aimed at Pac, Pac took it personally, real personally. To him, it felt like a taunt, like Big was mocking the very trauma he had just survived. Whether intentional or not, that record poured gasoline on a fire that was already out of control. That's why Irv Gotti warned Jay, chill out. The streets were too hot, the beef was too real, and anything that even hinted at disrespect could explode into something much bigger. But Jay didn't back down. He dropped Brooklyn's Finest anyway, and Biggie's verse, full of smoke. Subtle jabs, slick talk, and shots that felt aimed directly at Pac. He even called him my son, a clear sign of disrespect in rap culture. And let's not forget the sly nods to the Faith Evans rumors, the very whispers that drove Pac to record Hit 'Em Up months later. It wasn't just music anymore. It was personal, it was dangerous, and Jay had just stepped right into the middle of hip-hop's deadliest feud.
And then what Big did, which I was like, that's why Pac was on Jay, because of Brooklyn's Finest. If they have twins, you probably have 2 Pacs. Get it? 2 Pacs. And Jay's on the record with him. So now he's like, you ain't no like me, Jay-Z. Then he start bombing on.
People knew exactly who Biggie was aiming at, and Pac wasn't one to let it slide. He clapped back hard with tracks like Bomb First, My Second Reply, and Fuck Friends. Each one laced with that trademark fury. No filters, no mercy. And yes, Jay-Z's name started surfacing too. Fans were bracing for war, expecting Jay to fire back with his own diss, a full-on lyrical showdown between two rising titans. But that moment, it never came, at least not while Pac was alive. Just weeks later, the unthinkable happened. Tupac was gunned down in a drive-by in Las Vegas. The hip-hop world stood still. Shock, grief, silence. But here's the twist. Jay-Z had written a response, a track called Scathing, and from what insiders say, it lived up to the name. A ruthless, unfiltered diss aimed directly at Pac, line for line, no punches pulled. But Jay never officially dropped it. Why? According to those close to him, Jay held back out of caution, maybe out of respect, maybe fear of escalating things while Pac was still breathing and bullets were still flying. But after Pac passed, Jay changed course. He performed Scathing live at the Apollo Theater, and the crowd was stunned. The lyrics? Cold-blooded, direct, disrespectful in a way that felt personal. DJ Clark Kent, who was there, later said the bars were ice cold. So the question is, why? Why would Jay wait until after Pac was gone to finally speak his mind? Was it strategy? Was it pent-up frustration? Or was it an attempt to rewrite the narrative, knowing Pac wouldn't be able to answer back? Whatever the reason, that moment added a whole new layer to Jay-Z's rise, and to the complicated legacy of a battle that never got its true ending.
And it's funny because before he performed the record, he was like, yo, no disrespect to the dead, but you just can't say whatever to me.
Oh, so he actually performed it after Pac passed.
Yeah. Yeah, we was at the Apollo. It was, I will say this, if you can find anybody who was at that show and the Apollo was packed, they will tell you that it was absolutely crazy, the things he was saying. I was like, Lord Jesus. Like when when you hear something, it's one thing, but then when you hear it performed, it's like, jeez. It was super tough.
That's where things start to get messy. For years, whispers have floated around that Jay felt a quiet sense of relief after Pac died. Not joy, but relief. Because while Jay respected Pac's artistry, he was also intimidated by him. And honestly, who wouldn't be? Pac had that raw, unfiltered, explosive energy, the kinds you couldn't predict, couldn't fake, and definitely couldn't match. He didn't just rap, he commanded. He was a storm with a mic, and everyone in the game felt it. And according to Gene Deal, former bodyguard for Diddy, that fear was real. Gene claimed that during one trip to Vegas, Jay-Z straight up refused to leave his hotel room because Pac and his crew were out roaming the city. Jay didn't want that smoke, not in the streets, not in real life. So while the official story stayed quiet, behind the scenes, insiders were saying it out loud. Jay respected Pac, but he was also scared of him.
The story is that Jay was going to try to perform in Vegas, but Pac was in Vegas, and him and his dudes now, and they wasn't going to let Jay-Z come out the hotel. They found out where Jay was at, and Jay wasn't going to come out the hotel. He was going to miss that performance or whatever like that, do that concert, and Jay was scared no more. Jay wasn't coming out that hotel until he got clearance.
Jay didn't want any smoke, and that fear wasn't just speculation, it was real. Fans have long called Jay-Z sneaky for the way he handled his tension with Pac. He never addressed him face to face, never dropped a diss while Pac was alive. Instead, he waited until it was safe, until the threat was gone. And the truth? Jay and his camp had a reputation for throwing subliminal shots, sneaky little jabs in verses hoping to bait Pac into blowing up. They knew how Pac was wired, passionate, emotional, ready to go to war over a line. And they used that against him. He saw what Pac had, that raw magnetic presence, that rare it factor you can't buy, can't fake, can't manufacture. Jay might have had the clever wordplay and smooth delivery, but he couldn't match Pac's energy. No matter how high he climbed, Pac's shadow loomed large. Even Nas couldn't hold his tongue about it. In an old interview with Vibe, Nas dropped a wild story. He said he and Jay were chilling when Jay looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'm better than Biggie." Nas was stunned. But Jay didn't stop there, he doubled down saying, Tupac and DMX weren't lyricists. Nas wasn't having it. He fired back instantly. Tupac was the greatest ever, period. That moment stuck, and to a lot of fans it confirmed what they'd always suspected, that Jay-Z wasn't just confident, he was arrogant, calculated, and willing to rewrite history to crown himself. That's why, to this day, some still call Jay a snake in the game. But it gets deeper. Jay stayed close to Diddy, even after all the dark rumors started bubbling up. The whispers that Diddy might have played a role in the setup that led to Pac's death. And once Pac and Biggie were both gone, suddenly, Diddy was handing Jay the crown. He started calling him the heir, the one who filled their shoes. Meanwhile, the streets were buzzing, because it all felt too convenient, too clean. And for some, it raised one chilling question. Did Jay-Z build his empire on the graves of two icons?
Build them shoes though. You feel you came in and you know what I'm saying? So we definitely give thanks for you. You know what I'm saying? Because you definitely, came in and I just know how much Big like really looked up to Jay. You know what I'm saying? They looked up to each other. And yeah, that is crazy to have to step into the shoes of like two people. Because that's all it was, really, was those two people. And they had like the game, they had things on lock. Hov was coming, you know what I'm saying? But like, it was like these two cats was just so big, you know what I'm saying? And then so it's like to have all of that, like, come on you and have that responsibility to keep this shit fly and keep the art of it going.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I think Hov really kept the, Cole kept the art of it going and was able to take where they was at and take it, take it even higher.
Jay never backed away. Through years of rumors, whispers, and serious accusations surrounding Diddy, Jay-Z stood tall right beside him, smiling, shaking hands, posing for photos. Loyalty or optics? That was the question. But then came 2023. The Cassie lawsuit hit like a sledgehammer, cracking everything wide open. Suddenly, Jay's whole vibe shifted. The warmth vanished, and now, he's out here saying he and Diddy were never even that close. We weren't really friends like that. Really? After decades of collaboration, cosigns, and champagne toasts? So what's the real story? From Big Daddy Kane's quiet frustration, to Tupac's early warnings, to Jay's subtle, behind-the-scenes power plays. It's starting to feel like Jay-Z didn't rise to the top on talent alone. He studied the game like a surgeon, borrowed flows, learned from the masters, then slowly pushed them to the sidelines. It wasn't just ambition, it was strategy. And while it worked, it wasn't clean, not even close. Now, decades later, the silence is breaking. The peers who once stayed quiet, they're finally talking, finally questioning. Is Jay-Z's legacy really about greatness? Or is it a monument built on silence, sidesteps, and cold betrayal? So now I want to hear from you. Was Jay just playing chess in a cutthroat industry? Or did he flat out turn his back on the very people who helped him rise? Was his jealousy of Pac real? And has it shaped every move since? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear the real story. And don't forget to subscribe. Because trust me, what's coming next, you won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.